Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is Lee Gabriel. We know each other for a long time.
You were my first and last boyfriend.
Yeah.
Santiago.
Yeah.
So you were gay for
yeah,
about
no,
2 weeks.
I dated a dude.
For about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a big deal.
Well, like I was just telling them, I'm confident enough in my masculinity to accept that.
Good.
So I could potentially do drag if I wanted to. I don't mind.
You know who's really confident in their masculinity is Ariel. Sitting right over here.
Yeah.
Beat to the gods. For people who don't know what that means, it means full face of makeup and a mermaid at seashell shirt.
So yeah, let's at least acknowledge the multiple gay elephants in the room, and
yes.
that there are lots of other drag queens in the room. But we're gonna continue doing this interview. Yes,
we're gonna continue doing this interview. But yeah, I brought my gaggle of drag queens with me because they go with me everywhere that I need to go. You know, the gynecologist, divorce court, all sorts of things.
Yeah,
family functions.
Well, it's good to have some bodyguards.
Yes, in stilettos. But yeah, no, I broke up with you over a voicemail.
I don't even remember.
And I think the voicemail said, "I'm sorry, Santiago, I can't be with you anymore. I'm a lesbian. We'll talk about this later. Bye."
Yeah, I really do not remember. Middle school is a giant blur, not because I was high or anything, but because I just was so emotionally, like, unprepared for the universe.
And you're from Venezuela, correct?
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm interviewing you now.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
First and foremost, the usual first question is, what do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Well, I am the showrunner for a drag company that's up and coming and had a very successful first show.
It was awesome.
And we're called,
was there.
Yes, you were there. It was called Haus Down Productions Presents Planned Parenthood Benefit. Yeah. And the company's called Haus Down Productions. And as I said, we're just starting out, but I've been enamored with drag for my entire life, pretty much since I was 11 years old, or 10 years old, really. So that's what I do. I am a showrunner, and I'm also a musician.
Yay. Me too.
Yes. I'm a musician. I play guitar, banjo, ukulele, mandolin, anything with strings, pretty much. That's not the violin, because I don't have the discipline for that shit.
Yeah, I don't either. There's a violin sitting right there, and we just got it. It's in the bookshelf there. Yeah.
Cool.
But I don't know. I'm trying to get rid of it. You want a violin?
No. I'm too broke for that.
Okay.
Plus, I don't have the discipline.
Yeah.
As I just said. That's why piano never worked out for me.
Piano's fun. Anyways, where can we start? Let's start at least with music, and then move on to drag.
Yes.
Why is music important to you?
Music has always been very therapeutic for me. I'm someone who has gone through and has needed a lot of therapy, but I find a lot of catharsis in listening to music, and I find a lot of catharsis in playing music, too.
Yeah.
I write my own songs, and the times that were most traumatic for me were the times that I wrote my best lyrics, that I could delve into metaphors, because my parents were not accepting of me coming out, either as lesbian or as trans, which I am trans. So when I was writing music, it was my way to hide behind metaphors. One of the favorite lyrics that I've ever written was called, for a song called Living By, and the lyrics were, "I'm running out of colors to paint myself for you." Because I felt like I had to be painted up like a doll all the time. I couldn't express my masculinity. I couldn't express who I was. So I was running out of colors in my little paint box of colors to paint myself for my parents. So, you know, just like Alanis Morissette, you know, once I'm happy, I can't write anything, and it all sounds like shit.
Yeah.
But once I am in a deep, dark place, I can delve into metaphors, and I can really write. So music has been a way for me to write away pain and to gain some sort of like self-actualization and self-understanding through the lyrics.
Yeah. When did you first start playing music or learning how to play an instrument or sing or whatever?
I started very young. My first main stage musical, I was 6 years old.
Ooh. What was that?
That was called 'Twas. And it's a play on 'Twas the Night before Christmas. And I was a little Madeline doll, the little French girl, little Madeline doll. But I was basically born into the theater. My sister did theater, and she's nearly 11 years older than me. So I just grew up singing. I grew up in the theater. I started voice lessons at like 8 years old. So I always grew up singing a lot of jazz music, a lot of like Etta James and Billie Holiday and stuff like that. And then I started playing guitar around 10, 11, and I just fell in love with the guitar. I had an amazing guitar teacher right off the bat, and then I had a really amazing guitar teacher once I moved to Oklahoma when I was like 13. That just taught me everything that I know about guitar, and that's why I don't learn anything anymore, is because I had such a great teacher, and then I just stopped. I stopped learning, so I'm kind of stagnant in my guitar playing. I can play chords really well.
Yeah.
And I can do little riffs and stuff, but...
If you're a singer-songwriter, it's all you really need.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I am, singer/songwriter.
Yeah.
I've been doing this, speaking of music as therapy, every time I do a show, like, it seems like I have a crisis, like, right before. And so the first song that I play is Three Little Birds by Bob Marley.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, don't worry about a thing. It's going to be all right. I'm trying not to quote too many lyrics because I don't want you to get flagged.
Nah.
But, yeah, like, music is just a way for me to self-actualize and process a lot of things. And it has been since I was very, very little. Because growing up in theater, you're taught to express the lyrics that you're singing, not just sing them, but like every breath is a period.
Yeah.
You know, every breath is a comma. It's not just singing it straight through. It's not like school choir where, you know, nobody really cares and you're not really passionate about it. You have to really convey the emotions. And so I grew up with music from a music theater standpoint of really conveying the emotions. And so I've been able to process emotions.
And then you've had a bit of a career in music. You've been traveling and stuff. What's that been like?
Yeah, all throughout high school. I had a really supportive high school. So me and my best friend Jason were able to tour, you know, and skip school sometimes. But we'd manage it around breaks. I recorded 2 albums in high school.
Yeah.
And I've traveled all around the United States. I've done West Coast and like Mid-America tours. One of my favorite places ever to tour was New Mexico. I loved New Mexico so much. I loved Santa Fe so much. But just, it was all like a do-it-yourself, on the road type of thing. I would save up my money from busking or playing on the street, or I would save up my money from paid gigs, and I'd just have all my little tour money, and then one of our parents would just drive us around to different places, and we'd just try to make the money back on tour by selling albums or selling, you know, ourselves. That sounds funny, but selling our brand and trying to get people to tip us or buy our CDs, so...
How much of that was your enthusiasm?
All of it.
Yeah.
My parents are not supportive of a lot of things that I do, like the drag or my gender or sexuality, but they are very supportive of my music, almost to the point of like stage mom type thing. But I was very passionate about doing music, and so it was all me making my money, recording my albums, making those connections, networking with people, taking that and running with it.
Yeah. Do you still have plans to, like, continue doing more music?
Yeah, I did 3 gigs over the weekend. I'm fucking exhausted. My throat is shot. I smoke too many cigarettes.
Yeah.
I drink too much coffee. But, yeah, I played 3 gigs this weekend. I played 1 in the Paseo Arts District and then 2 in Bethany. And one of them was a paying gig, so ka-ching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found a new booking manager, so I'm out there again.
Yeah.
I moved away to Seattle for a little while, and then I came back here. So I'm just now getting back into the scene, but the Paseo Arts District's like a great place to start.
Yeah.
And so after that, like from there, I started doing Bethany. I've played gigs in Norman recently.
Yeah.
So I'm all over the place just making my connections. I'm really good at networking.
What brought you to Seattle, or I guess back to Seattle?
Yeah, so I was born in Washington State, and then at 11 years old, my family moved to Oklahoma. And then at 18, I was like, I know everything. I can go back to Seattle and make it work. So I went back to, Olympia and Bothell. I had 2 residences, and Bothell's like a suburb of Seattle, and then Olympia's the capital. Cool. And I went to school there in Olympia and did a whole lot of theater stuff.
Yeah.
But I was also going through a lot with depression and anxiety, and it just, in the end, it didn't work out. I was institutionalized twice, and I came back here.
Yeah.
But what brought me back to Seattle was, I recorded my second album there, and I was like, I can do music, I can make it work, I can get out there, I know absolutely everything about life.
Sure.
So that's kind of how everyone is outside of high school, like just getting out, and so.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to be back, and there is like this deep, rich, artistic community here.
Yes.
That I really love and appreciate. And it's just kind of like this hidden pocket of the buckle of the Bible Belt that has just an explosion of creative intellect that there isn't anywhere else.
Yeah. No, I think that a big problem of what happens with art and like creative endeavors in Oklahoma in general is that people get started here, build up, and then move away.
Yeah.
Do you plan on, I guess, like, building up a home base here, or are you going to move away at some point?
Well, now that I've got Haus Down Productions,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about staying for a little while longer. Thinking about going to UCO. Shut the fuck up, Alana.
She's dying.
I know.
Queen. Really, Queen? This is my moment. This is my moment.
Continue.
Anyway. Yeah, no, I don't know where life's going to take me, but I know that I'm going to go to school here, and I'm going to keep Haus Down Productions up and running until I get other people on board to help manage it and run it. I've got some really good crew now that's helping me, but I don't know. And I'm definitely not going back to Seattle. I think I have got too much trauma there. But I don't know. I'm thinking maybe New Mexico might be the place for me. I'm thinking maybe Chicago. They've got a deep, rich art scene too. But I know that Oklahoma, begrudgingly, will always have my heart.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a song about that as I was leaving Oklahoma called Don't Lock the Door When I'm Gone. Just the metaphor being, you know, I'm leaving, I'm flying away, I'm going to this strange, different place that I haven't been in a very long time.
Yeah.
And so to my parents, I said, you know, I'm leaving, but don't lock the door when I'm gone. I'm glad they didn't, because I live with them part-time.
Yeah. And then, well, let's go ahead and bridge into your Haus Down Productions.
Haus Down Productions. Yes. I don't know why I'm a wrestling announcer now, but so I guess my affinity toward drag began when I was 10. I watched the musical Rent for the first time, and I fell in love with the character Angel. I don't know, did I ever force you to watch Rent?
I've seen Rent.
But did I force you to watch Rent? Because I forced a lot of people to watch Rent.
I don't think you forced me to watch Rent, but I've seen Rent.
Were you forced into it?
I think I watched it willingly.
Oh, okay, good. But, yeah, I was just really interested in the gender play of the character Angel, and Angel is so sweet and has a really terrible demise. I'm not going to spoil the movie for you, even though I kind of just did. But just the gender play and the artistic expression of gender really caught me at a young age. And I remember at the time, when I was 10, my mom sat down with me and was like, you know, I have gay friends at work, like, it's okay to be gay. When I came out, that all went out the window.
Wow.
But I had that, like, very deep, important talk with my mom very young. And so I just got hooked onto drag. And then was still in love with drag all through when I came out as lesbian. And then around 14, when I started coming out as trans, I latched on to drag a lot. Because my mom had told me, if you don't dress like the girl that you are, which I'm not a girl, but she said if you don't dress like the girl that you are, you don't have a place to live. And so I thought, hey, I can dress like a girl and still be a man. That's the thing. That exists.
Yeah.
That's called a drag queen.
Yeah.
And so I latched on to drag. I started watching RuPaul's Drag Race. I started watching the documentary Paris is Burning about the Vogue scene in Harlem in the late 80s.
I need to watch that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful documentary. But I latched on to all these different sort of avenues of drag and started latching on to different local drag queens in Oklahoma, even though I couldn't go out and see them.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was. I was a drag queen in a woman's body. Mm-hmm. Or in a female body.
Yeah.
Not really in a woman's body, because it's my body, but in a female body. And so drag was just a way for me to express my gender without expressing my gender outwardly.
Yeah. Well, and then did you get involved in drag in Seattle?
I did get involved in drag in Washington State. I was really involved in like the Lakewood scene and the Olympia scene for a while. I got really heavy into that, really interested in that. And the first drag performance that I ever did was at this little Eagles club, which is like a kind of like a veterans club. And I did I Won't Say I'm in Love from Hercules. So I performed as a queen.
That's awesome.
But what's really interesting about that is that I painted myself the house down. You'll remember that from earlier. After this, you'll take a quiz on all these drag terms. But I painted myself the house down, had a wig, had a fabulous, fierce purple bodysuit, and some really, really high wedges. And I went out there and performed, and everybody called me he. It was like they recognized me as a boy because they had never seen a folk queen or a woman being in drag. So they recognized me as a man, and I'm like, that's so funny how I can dress as this like pinnacle of hyper femininity and be addressed as a man.
Ironic.
Yeah. So I got involved there, and I also had this blog that I started when I was 18 called Drag Family Trees, where I would reach out to drag queens all across the world, not just the country, and ask them about their drag family. And a drag family is kind of like your crew. It's the people who got you into drag, and then the person who got you into drag is then your drag mother or your drag father if they're a drag king. And then you've got drag cousins, drag aunts, drag sisters, and you're all like interconnected. So the idea for the blog sorry, smoker cough and allergies. The idea for the blog was to interconnect all these different families and see how they were all related, kind of like an ancestry.com.
Yeah.
And so I started with Queens in Oklahoma. I went out and reached out to them and was like, hey, I'm running this blog. I would like to talk to you about your drag connections and who you're related to. and I actually found my drag family through that blog. So when I was living in Washington, I had all these drag queens that I was talking to from all over the world, but mainly in Oklahoma. And I was like, I'm going to take a visit. I'm going to do a review of a club. So I took a visit, stayed with my parents, and had a family drive me to a drag club called the Rec Room, which is now shut down. But I went to the Rec Room, and I saw these fabulous queens called the Vandy Camps. I interviewed them. And my mom, Kinseta Vandy Camp, I asked her to be my mom by buying her an obsessive-compulsive cosmetics lip tar. And it was almost like a marriage proposal. I was like, I gave her the lip tar, and I was like, will you be my drag mom? So my drag family was in Oklahoma. I went back to Washington, so I would keep in touch with them through Skype and through interviews and through phone calls, but I was still living in Washington. And then when I came back to Oklahoma, I was really traumatized, and I ended up living with my drag grandmother, Jexa, for a little while, just to kind of get back on my feet again. So a drag family is there for you no matter what. They're not just your networking people. They're not just the people that got you into drag. They're not just the people that get you into gigs, but it's this deep soul bond of chosen family, because a lot of gay people get abandoned by their real families, so all they have is their drag family. And so that's what that was for me, and that's what my whole blog was about, was finding these different connections. And I found people that I was related to through my family. Some of them have even been on RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's basically how I got into drag and how I got really interested in drag. And there's so many facets of drag that I find completely fascinating about the gender play. And I have these different categories that I put drag into and what they mean from an academic standpoint, because I'm a scholar. And the brunt of my scholarly work has been about drag and about the sociology aspect of drag.
Yeah. And And then I guess I could ask, like, some of your terminology here. You referred to yourself as a faux queen. Was that?
Okay, so a faux queen, there's a couple definitions. The first one would be a woman dressing as a drag queen.
Mm-hmm.
So a woman painting the house down,
Yeah.
dressing in drag. But the definition that I use is a female-bodied person dressed as a drag queen.
Sure.
So basically a faux queen is just someone with a female body who paints themselves and performs as a drag queen, who lip syncs, who wears a wig, who puts on the heels and works in the drag scene.
Yeah. Is there, like, a certain perception that, like, is different, or a certain difference in performance that happens with a faux queen?
There shouldn't be.
Cool.
I consider it cheating if you're not padding and wearing a wig.
Sure.
And wearing makeup the way that drag queens would wear. And there are some drag queens that don't pad, but as a female body person, you really want to be able to emulate
Yeah.
what drag is. But also drag is such an expansive topic because you've got drag queens that are very avant-garde or do what's called like tranimal looks. You've got people who paint themselves to look like giraffes, and that's still drag. I mean, drag is all-encompassing visual body art.
Yeah.
And then going out there and performing, either lip-syncing or singing.
And then how did House Down get started?
So House Down got started because, well, we could talk about this on the later episode too.
We'll do that too.
But Crystal Beth and I were... Crystal Beth is a drag queen from Oklahoma City. And we were talking about how there was no drag venue in Norman, Oklahoma, even though there's like 1,000,001 drag queens that live there. Crystal now lives in Norman, and I live in Norman part-time. And there's so many of us, but after the rec room got shut down, so many queens lost their jobs. And the rec room was in Oklahoma City, so now they're driving from, to Tulsa, or to Oklahoma City, or to Arkansas, or to Texas, or to different places in order to perform. And we were like, there really should be a drag venue in Norman. And so we just talked about it for a little bit, and Chris was like, yeah, I'm down, let's do this. And then I found through a friend of mine this venue called Resonator, which is an art gallery that holds shows, mostly music-based shows, but they had a fashion show, and I was like, this would be a really cool drag venue. And so I messaged Crystal on Facebook Messenger and was like, hey, I found us a venue. And I was so excited. I was like, I found us a venue, and they're going to let us do a drag show, and they're going to split the profits with us, and it's going to be magical and wonderful. And then she added like a ton of people to this group chat, and I added a ton of people to this group chat, and I think the group chat was first called like AIDS Awareness Drag Show or something like that. But I was like, we need a name. And so after we got the venue all set up and all ready, then we thought about a name. And I suggested Haus Down Productions. And Haus Down is a drag term that's basically just an exclamation point. Like when I say, I painted myself the house down, it means I did makeup over the top. Exclamation point.
Yes.
So Haus Down Productions could basically just be abbreviated to exclamation point productions. Or like if someone performs the house down. It's an abbreviation of burning the house down. It's basically what that is.
Cool. And of course we will plug that again in an hour, but when is the next show?
The next show is going to be on March 25th? March 25th. March 25th. Thank you, guys. Thank you. My gaggle of drag queens is reminding me. But March 20th. What are you guys doing over there?
Talking shit.
Oh my god.
Judging your mother.
Judging my mother. Judging Kinzada. Don't judge Kinzada. She's my mom. Stop it.
God has judged her enough.
God has judged her enough. There is no excuse for you.
Later.
There is no excuse for you, Alana.
Was that when she was pregnant?
Yes.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Yeah, my drag mom, she used to be bigger than she is, and she's super, super handsome now. Super handsome.
She's real handsome.
She's handsome and glad. We'll get to that later.
Anyway, March 25th is going to be the next show. So the first show was a Planned Parenthood benefit because in these Trumpian times, we needed to do something to give back to the community. And so I was so overwhelmed by the support. We had like 80 plus people come to the show.
Yeah.
The cover charge was $4, and I was planning on giving all of that to Planned Parenthood because we worked out something with the venue where I could just pay them a flat fee. So I was going to give all the proceeds to Planned Parenthood. And we ended up raising $677.
Yeah.
So I can't do the math on that. Maybe one of you guys with the phones could do the math on that. So $80, or so 80 times 4.
80 times 4.
Just 320.
Yeah, that's 320.
That's $320. So we raised over twice that for Planned Parenthood through donations, and then the Queens got their tips as well. So.
Got some tips and some tips.
So we got a lot of tips. But yeah, $677 towards Planned Parenthood, and it was just a show with 7 drag queens, and I let them have free reign, do whatever they want, had them host it. As a showrunner, my basic duties are just running around, making sure all the queens are ready to perform, making sure the DJ has what they need, taking care of people at the door, cover charges, making sure everyone feels welcome. So I was running around doing a bunch of different things, and I didn't even realize how much money we had made until after the second set of the show had started. Yeah. And I had counted it all out. We had representatives from Planned Parenthood there watching me count it, and they were like, holy shit, we have never raised this much money at an outside benefit.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. Really incredible.
It is really awesome. And I'm glad to have been there and to have supported and everything.
Yeah, what did you think about the show?
It was amazing. All of you guys are amazing.
Especially the hostess. Just the one.
No, yeah, everything was great. It was my first drag show, and so while I had some idea of what to expect since I've watched some of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh, yes. You know everything about drag because you watched the RuPaul's Drag Race.
I can't say I know everything, so... but I know at least some of it, so it was really cool to see, and the performance is amazing.
Yeah.
Going into a bit of the, I guess, other half of the show, I try to ask sort of deeper questions, and because I enjoy philosophy, it does sort of come down to that. But to start that off, what do you believe?
About what?
The existence, God, or anything.
Well, I'm converting to Episcopalianism, so I am a Christian. Which my Christianity actually came through my queerness, which is really funny because usually queerness drives people away from Christianity because of all the hatred that comes for it, that comes from it. You know, families disowning you, churches disowning you, saying that you're not allowed to worship and you're not allowed to believe in a God that created you.
Sure.
And that's just from my Christian standpoint. So for anyone listening, if you don't agree with this, that's absolutely fine. Episcopalians are very lax. Robin Williams called it Catholic Light. Some people call them whiskey palians, but I don't drink whiskey that often. But I actually came from a family of... My mom is a devoutly religious Baptist woman. She says she's Methodist, but she grew up Baptist, so we're just going to stick with that. And then my dad actually... is completely against religion, completely has an aversion to religion, because he came up through the Jim Jones People's Temple, which, if you haven't heard of it or aren't familiar with it, it's a cult where in the 1970s they all lived in Guyana in a place called Jonestown, and they all drank Kool-Aid and committed mass murder. They said it was a mass suicide, but it's actually a mass murder brought by Jim Jones.
Yeah.
Killed all of his followers.
Yeah.
So my dad was in that cult when they were in San Francisco before they went to Jonestown, and his whole family had passports, his whole family had everything. And my grandpa carried a picture of Jim Jones until the day that he died. I mean, he was a true believer.
Yeah.
But my grandmother, she was told by Jim Jones that she could no longer smoke cigarettes and she could no longer wear her lipstick because it wasn't becoming of a woman of God. So he completely shattered her perception of who he was. And so even though they had the passports, they were ready to go. they had witnessed all these faith healings.
Sure.
They had witnessed people being dragged away that didn't believe. They decided to leave under cover of night because she's like, I'm not giving up my Maybelline and I'm not giving up my Virginia Slims. Like, we are leaving. And so they escaped to Oklahoma, and they moved back with family, didn't tell anybody else where they were going. And then on TV one day, my dad saw all these people that he knew dead
Yeah.
on the screen. And so he's very averted to religion. So I grew up in a house kind of divided. I went to church sometimes with my mom. My dad was never about that life. My dad could never be religious again after what had happened to him.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of churched and kind of unchurched, but I was baptized in a Baptist church and believed in God for a long time, and then really struggled with God because of coming out and because, you know, I thought that I didn't belong or I couldn't belong.
Yeah.
And I was playing a gig one day when I was about 15 years old at a little coffee shop, and I had this guy come up to me, and he was like, hey, my wife and I go to this church, and we would really love for you to come. The church is called Expressions. I'm going to plug them because they're amazing. Expressions OKC. So I'm going to invite you to come play at our church because I was playing this gospel song. And they were like, yeah, let's. I was like, yeah, let's do it. My mom was really, really excited for me to be playing at a church.
Yeah.
She's like, yes, my, you know, little girl, quote unquote, is going to be a godly girl, and she's going to play at this gig, and it's going to be amazing, and we're going to get involved with the church again. So I go to the church. Shut the fuck up.
Shoe. Daddy, will you tie my shoe?
So, anyway.
Is it Betty?
Anyway. We were headed to this church, and we get there, Expressions OKC, and I start playing, and then the pastor starts speaking, and he starts talking about him and his husband.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck yes, karma.
Yeah.
Karma, Mom.
Yeah.
Karma, karma, karma. So the church ended up being a gay church. And I call it a gay church not because it's only for gay people. It's not exclusive to anybody. But gay people are affirmed and are welcome there.
Yeah.
And they aren't at a lot of the nearby churches. And, you know, in Oklahoma, there's a church, you know, on every single street. There's a church and a liquor store and a crest. And there's this thing about this tradition of believing. So even if you don't really believe, you have to go to church. And then all these gay people would be outcast from the church, so they had to find their other church. So there were atheists that were gay that went to the church just because all their life they had gone to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
And so this church was just this wonderful place where people of all different faiths, of all different backgrounds, of all different ages, of all different colors could come together and worship a God that loves and affirms them. So I got really into Christianity again, and it stuck with me. And I definitely believe that Jesus loves and embraces and accepts everybody. And the Episcopalian Church believes the same and stands for the same. And so I kind of queer my theology. I look at my theology through a queer lens all the time. And I talk a lot in my ministry class about gender.
Yeah.
That's actually like one of my little hacks, because whenever I don't know what we're talking about, or I didn't read the material, or I didn't study, which is more often than I would like to admit, I will turn the conversation on gender and be like, oh, can you believe in Leviticus they said this about women? Or can you believe that this textbook said that women are the weaker sex? And so we'll go back and forth talking about it. But Jesus never said a damn thing about gay people.
Yeah.
All he said was love one another.
Yeah.
Love thy neighbor.
I mean, there are some translations as to which it sort of says it where it's sort of like back translated into homosexual, but it's like a really bad translation. But I was going to ask about that, how...
But Jesus Christ never said anything about homosexuals.
Yes, I think that was Paul.
Oh, well, yeah, Paul said a lot about homosexuals, but Paul said a lot about... You know, and I used to really not like Paul. I used to really dislike Paul. And through talking to my ministry class, I've learned so much about Paul and his years as a slave and his years as being beaten down and being literally struck by God on the head for being such an asshole. And I'm like, you know what? Paul has been through a lot. Paul was of a different time. I look at the Bible as a historical document more than I do a spiritual document.
Sure. But I mean, so what is that? How does that translate to how you believe in facts that it states?
I look at the historical context of what I'm reading.
Okay.
And I know that a lot of it is allegory, like the Israelites were basically not really a people, but they formed and became a people, and they had to exclude people in order to become a people. So there were the Jews and the Gentiles.
Yeah.
And while Israel was at war, they had to unify over something to hate. Right? So they would hate on different groups of people. They would hate on women who had second husbands. They would hate on gay people. Well, not really gay people, but men who had, like, younger boys around. Which I,
pederasts.
totally agree with. I totally agree with hating on those people. Because, I'm sorry. Love thy neighbor, but not thy pedophile. Sorry. But I look at it from a historical context. I look at all the war that happened, and I also know that a lot of those things are just stories because there's not enough historical evidence to back them up.
Yeah.
But in the New Testament, I mostly just look at Jesus as a figure of love, and I don't believe that God has a gender.
Yeah.
But I look at the person of Jesus, or maybe even the multiple people of Jesus, that were Jesus at one point or another, as people who stood for a complete dismantling of organized religion. And a complete dismantling of this hierarchy of people. And a complete dismantling of hatred through that hierarchy.
Yeah. If Jesus stands for the dismantling of organized religion, why be Episcopalian?
Because I love my Episcopalians. And what I really like about, even though this is like the epitome of organized religion, what I really like about the Episcopalian Church is that it's liturgical. So it follows the liturgical calendar. Meaning that if I go to an Episcopalian church anywhere in the world, they will be preaching on the same thing.
Yeah.
So the pastor or the bishop or the preacher of any sort in an Episcopalian church, the Episcopalian bishops, they don't have the power to sway the topic just to whatever they want to preach on.
Sure.
Just to whatever political agenda they have pushed. They have to try really hard to do that because they're following the liturgical calendar.
Yeah.
And so I really like that. And I really like my EFM class, my Education for Ministry class, because you can go into it and not be Episcopalian. And just kind of discover yourself as a spiritual religious person again. And I'm kind of a baby on that journey. I have a friend that uses this metaphor about perfume, that, the perfume smells really good while you're walking through the aisle, but you haven't quite been sold on it yet. You haven't quite bought in it yet. You've just smelled it, and you like the smell of the perfume. And she used this metaphor in a different way than I'm going to use it. But the perfume, for me, is being able to say that I am a believer in something. That I am a spiritual being, that I have a spiritual practice that I practice all the time. Whether it be, contemplative prayer, or regular prayer, or doing something social justice-y, or yoga, whatever it is. So I'm smelling that perfume, and I'm really just liking the perfume of the Episcopalian Church, but I haven't quite made it there yet.
And then, so you also mentioned the multiple Jesus.
Jesus.
However that grammar works. What's behind that?
Well, I was watching this documentary about the Catholic Church and about how there are rumors and documents about there being more than one person who was written of as Jesus in the Bible. And I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
But if it is, I don't care.
Yeah. So rather than the truth claims that the Bible makes, you would rather just follow the Bible as a spiritual guide, rather?
I'd rather follow Jesus as a spiritual guide.
Okay.
And the writings about Jesus as a spiritual guide, and look at the Bible as a historical artifact about faith, about joy, about violence, about all those sorts of things. Just look at it as a historical artifact from the people who wrote it in a time of struggle.
So then, as far as spirituality goes, spirituality and beliefs make an attempt to make claims about the natural world. So, what are your beliefs on the natural world, let's say, regarding heaven or hell?
Well, there is no hell. I can say that.
Yeah.
I can say that very, very confidently. In the Bible, the word for hell, I forget what it is, but it's translated from a Hebrew word that means like a ditch or a dump. So people would go into a ditch or into a dump, and it was a metaphor for people being cast out of their families. Being sent to hell would be being thrown basically into a dump and being burned in the fire. And then the myth of hell came about a lot later.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And in terms of heaven, I don't know what happens to us when we die.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I get turned into a beautiful tree, or that some bugs get some really good free dinner.
Yeah.
But after we die, I don't know what happens, but I believe that we can create hell on earth, and we can create heaven on earth. And that's what I'm focused on, is the right here and right now. I'm not really one of those Christians that's focused on what happens after. I'm focused on in the here and now.
Okay. How do we make the here and now much better for all people?
I believe that being sympathetic and empathetic towards people, really trying to understand who they are, like you're doing through this podcast, is a way to do that. Just having and gaining a better understanding of humankind in general, and of people of all different backgrounds. And that's what I loved so much about the church that I came from, Expressions, is that they had this complete and total empathy for where you were, wherever you were, right then and there. And with Haus Down Productions, I am trying to do the same thing by making it an all-ages venue for everybody to come and enjoy the drag, and raising money for Planned Parenthood and doing things to help out locally from where you are. I think that local is the way to go. Helping out your local Planned Parenthood, helping out your local church, helping out your local schools is the way to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Because if we're all funneling money into these giant PACs or these giant, corporate charities, where's that money really going? What are we really doing?
Yeah.
But if we focus on the small, on the local, on what we can feasibly fix and handle, then we'll make real change. And I believe that at the Haus Down Production show, we made real change that night. And so I think that empathy and local action is the way to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And that's what's worked for me in the past and in the present.
And then how do we, both locally and just as a whole, fight the shitstorm that is the Trump administration?
Local. Start local. I mean, I remember in the group chat for Haus Down Productions, after everything had happened, someone was like, oh, well, we're not going to have the show because everything's going to be burned down. And I was like, no. This show just became 1,001 times more important.
Yeah.
Because we will be helping a cause that is being attacked by the Trump administration. So this show just became so much more important. We need to boost it as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But I think that locally is where we start with everything. Empathy for people, so starting from the inside out.
Yeah.
Local action with people and like groups of people and groups in general that are being attacked.
Yeah.
So like your local ACLU, your local Planned Parenthood, your local schools.
Yeah.
That's where I would start.
And then how do you reach out to the people who are adamant about not accepting you, or adamant about taking away rights, or the people who are just diametrically opposed to everything that you stand for?
Well, I keep myself grounded. I know myself enough that I can meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
So I get to know them. I get to know a little about their life. I get to know why they believe the things that they believe. And then I share my own experiences. And that's where the empathy comes in.
Yes.
Because if I can empathize with them and I make them comfortable enough, they can then empathize with me.
Yeah.
And that's how you change hearts and minds, is through meeting people where they're at. So if I meet someone who's hyper-conservative, it's like that story with the woman in the well with Jesus, you know, he met her exactly where she was at. She was an adulterer, and he knew everything about her. But he met her exactly where she was at.
Yeah.
And through that, she became a believer.
Yeah.
So meeting them where they're at, getting to know who they are, and then after they share who they are, sharing who you are, and sharing all of your pain and all your trauma and all of your scars, right, to get to where you are, and relating that back to their own experiences will help them better understand you, rather than saying, oh, shame on you, you know, you should just accept me.
Yeah.
Why don't you accept me? What are the things in your life that are keeping you from opening up?
Yeah.
And then having them open up to you, and then you opening up to them. That's what's worked for me.
Yeah. Do you think that certain methods that are being used by social justice warriors are being more detrimental than they are being helpful?
I think that shaming people is never going to keep people on your side. But I do believe that there is a time and place for that. Like with the AIDS movement and with ACT UP, they were all about, you know, shaming the people who were literally killing people through withholding medications,
Yeah.
through gay propaganda, anti-gay propaganda attacks. I mean, there is a time for violence, and there is a time for war. But I believe that right now, social justice warriors should be focusing on empathy and love and action. And not action through hate, but action through peace.
Yeah.
Because that is how we will get the hyper-conservatives on our side.
Yeah.
Is not through deleting them on Facebook, but through sending them messages, through talking with them, through engaging with them.
Yeah.
Through letting them know, hey, I'm not just a social justice warrior. I'm a real person.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is why I believe what I believe.
How do you reach across to the people who, rather than just being adamant about being displeased about your position, but are also violent and willing to kill you?
Wow. I need to pause to think about that.
Yeah, I know. I ask hard questions.
Hard question, Santiago. Deep talks. I would say not to put yourself in danger. There are enough people like us dying. There are enough queer people dying. There are enough people of color dying. If someone has feelings that are so strong that they're willing to kill you, they're not the people you want to fix. You want to fix the people in the middle. You want to fix the people who can be fixed.
Yeah.
And who can change and who can love.
Is there anyone who cannot be fixed?
Violent, incredibly violent people. I believe that they can, but I don't believe that it's our job. I don't believe that it's our job to explain to people who we are and our rights.
Sure.
People in power are the people we need to focus on. But I don't know. It can't be fixed. I believe that an act of God or an act of something really huge must happen to them in order for them to be fixed. People who are willing to shoot up clubs, like at Pulse.
Do you think that it's possible for the world to find peace, whatever that means, to you, I guess?
No.
Why?
I believe it's possible for communities to find peace, but I don't think it's going to be like a widespread world peace sort of situation. I believe that through empathy, people could. I believe that, I guess I believe that it's possible.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that it's feasible, especially not in our lifetime.
Is that still the goal?
I think the goal is just local. I think my goal is just local, at least.
Yeah.
I believe that the goal is empathy within your own community and getting your own community to the point where it can feed itself and where it can govern itself and where it can have protections for everybody.
Yeah. How does the sort of personal connection that you might have with these people that you've reached out to extend to becoming real world solutions in laws or movements or whatever?
As I've said, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but starting out local.
Yeah.
So having that internal passion to reach out to people and then getting those people to do local actions,
Yeah.
whether it be raising money for Planned Parenthood, raising money for schools, donating to teachers, to animal shelters, to the ACLU. That's how it translates to policy. Getting those people to run for positions that aren't necessarily career politicians, but people who want to make a real change. But that all starts with empathy.
Yeah.
That all starts from the inside, and it goes outward.
Do you think that there is a necessity for government in general?
Yes.
Such as?
City planning, making sure that people have homes, making sure that people have schools, making sure that there's curriculum for schools. Yeah, I absolutely believe that there is a time and a place for government. But I also believe that the government needs to listen to the people.
Yes. And then, well, I guess I feel like that would be the same answer anyways. And so, how do we reach out to the people that are listening to this? And basically, plug your stuff once more.
Well, dear listener, try to find someone that you have a real issue with. That isn't going to hurt you. But that you have a real issue with. And try to get to know them. Try to get to know them deeply. And not in a keep your enemies closer kind of way, but in an empathy, understanding kind of way. Get a grasp on who they are. And then have them get a grasp on who you are by sharing. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So understand them, and then try to get them to understand you. Have that real world connection with them, and see what kind of change that you can make together.
Yeah.
See something, find some common ground, find some commonality that you can both be passionate about, and seek that first.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Awesome.
And then with Haus Down Productions, definitely come to our show if you want to be part of a movement that cares about local charities, but that also cares about, the local queer population, the local population of people of color, the local population of women. Come out to our shows, come support us so we can do more of them. March 25th at Resonator will be our next show.
Awesome. Lee, thank you for doing this with me. Do you have a Twitter or personal social media stuff?
You can add me at my drag name on Facebook. Kinsey Scale is my drag name. KINSEY space SCALE after the Kinsey Scale by Alfred Kinsey. It's another philosophical thing that you might be interested in. You can add me there, and you can like Haus Down Productions on Facebook, and it's spelled HAUS space down space productions on Facebook. Like it, the house down.
Thank you. I really appreciate you and respect you, and I've always adored you as a close friend.
Aww.
And we always need to continue to keep in touch, and I look forward to doing more stuff with you,
Absolutely.
like recording stuff.
Yes, we're gonna record. It's gonna be fierce.
Yeah. And of course, I am Santiago Ramones. You can find all the things that I do at my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music, which you will find on there. And you will also find this podcast, which I end every podcast with my 3 things, which are sort of my religion of sorts.